So the other topic I wanted to talk about tonight was the idea of detachment. So this is something that comes up a lot in spirituality. Um, and so I thought we could have a discussion about this. If anyone wanted to share what detachment means to you, or um, what comes to mind when you think of detachment.
I can start. I've been trying to practice that for a long time now, and I find myself um, sort of successful at doing that, and then sometimes I fall back into it, which is probably normal. And my favorite way of explaining how I've been practicing it is I try very hard to not be attached. So rather than detachment, I try hard not to be attached to any particular outcome of any particular situation. So, which is very different from how I used to be. How I used to be was, without realizing, I had expectations for how things should be. And when it didn't happen, there was a lot of disappointment. So, obviously, my life had a lot of disappointment because things don't always work out the way you expect or want it to work out, right? I think life works out the way it's supposed to. So now I have surrendered, and so I don't have attachment to any particular outcome, and it works really well for me. I'm much happier because of it.
Yeah, great.
And I have to remind myself sometimes, and when I go dark or I go disappointment, then I tell myself, well, because you were attached to some outcome.
Mm.
Remind myself, like, no, that's not what I want to do.
Yeah, great. Anyone
I
else?
can confuse detachment with dissociation. And in psychology, if a child is traumatized, they dissociate from their bodies, basically.
Mhm.
And I have a great deal of that. I have training in helping others as well with dissociation and association. One of the fascinating things to me is that the yogis have known it for thousands of years, but when they study brains, meditation is what reconnects the neural pathway from the dissociated cerebral back to the limbic. And it's what helps your brain heal from having to leave your body because stuff's happening you can't handle. And it's very interesting to me how I watch people who meditate. There is profound healing sometimes. And it's so cool. Because I don't know. I mean, I studied, for example, Aikido like 8 years, and every time I stepped on the mat was a brand new day. I had no body memory at all because I was so dissociated from my body. And I kept trying, it didn't work. But meditation has worked in a lovely way.
Oh,
So it's curious how the science backs it now.
yeah. I haven't heard that before about the research showing that meditation helps reconnect disassociated people. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score, which is probably the Bible on trauma, if you're interested in ever, or you could watch a YouTube on it.
I've heard of that book.
There's is a lot out there now because they can watch the brain light up and all that.
Right. And
It's amazing. For thousands of years, these dudes knew it, and taught it, and they didn't know why. Very cool.
yeah, and so you bring up a great point, but I think probably you guys know enough that you don't think this, but sometimes detachment can be thought of, like you're saying, as more like dissociating, or just withdrawing from the world, withdrawing from emotions, and that's not what it means at all. It's exactly like Helen was saying, and it ties in with the idea of faith that I was talking about earlier. That if you if you have faith that everything works out exactly the way it has to, then that allows you to be detached from the outcome, and that allows you to live life much more fully. Because if you're not afraid of bad things happening, it's much easier to just dive fully into life and live life more fully. I think for me personally in my life, practicing detachment has helped me when it's come time to make big life changes. right? So 2 years ago, I left my comfy corporate job in San Francisco and moved to Costa Rica. And my faith that everything works out the way it should and my detachment kind of helped me do that without too much fear. I mean, just help me have faith, or help me trust that even though I'm doing this kind of crazy thing and taking a big risk, that whatever happens is exactly what I need to happen to me. And so, like I was saying, it helps you, it takes a lot of the fear out of life and allows you to, it allows you to open yourself up to emotions more, because if you're not scared of what's going to happen. So it can actually help you live a much fuller life instead of a not a dissociated life. So
Agree with that. I feel like my life's much improved because I don't have the attachment.
right.
Isn't it human to attach? I mean, we attach to our parents or our lovers. If we're not attached, most people aren't happy. Isn't that true, or am I wrong?
Well, this is a different kind of attachment. I mean, it's you can still have close emotional ties with people. Close emotion, and detachment actually allows you to form deeper ties to people, because if you're not fixated on a particular outcome from that relationship with a person, so say if you really want to have a particular kind of relationship with some kind of person, but they don't want to have that same kind of relationship back, then that can cause you pain. And if that's happened several times, especially like in romantic relationships, you can be afraid to even open yourself up to relationships. But if you cultivate detachment and you're not attached to any particular outcome from this relationship you're trying to form with a person, then it allows you to give yourself fully to the relationship and allow it to develop into whatever it is supposed to be, rather than being fixated on being attached to a certain type of relationship developing with this person. Does that make sense?
I think it's good on paper.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah.
saying.
Yeah. So, well, what do you mean by that? In what way?
I think it's real hard to not have
Hmm.
ideas about what I expect, what I am looking for, whether I'm attached to a friend or expect a friend to show up or call me, and they don't for a long time. That, to not hurt and say, oh, it's okay, I love them, that I do have needs and expectations, and maybe it wouldn't be so painful if I didn't, but it wouldn't be the reward possibly. I don't know.
Hmm.
Maybe I'm
Well,
wrong.
well, there's no doubt that it is difficult. And like you're saying, we are kind of programmed from birth and trained from birth, and we have an inherent tendency to attach like that. And so it definitely is difficult. Um, but I think it's more difficult to go through life not striving for detachment. I think it opens you up for more pain, if or it can lead to just more of a dissociation, more just kind of, if you have a lot of if you have a history of not getting what you need out of a relationship, it can make you just want to withdraw from the world and stop even trying. So, but it is difficult. But or for me personally, trying to cultivate detachment and cultivate faith that it works out exactly the way it's supposed to, that allows me to keep entering into new relationships without fear that I'm going to get hurt, or it's fear that it's not going to turn out the way that I hope that it does.
To add on that, I find that detachment is actually a form of openness. And I think when there are a lot of expectations, that just creates a lot of rules and a lot more constriction. And so I find that cultivating more of the detachment, it actually opens things up even more, because if you didn't have an expectation, then things can just, circles can expand, horizons can, go farther. And so it's just been an interesting exploration to just be like, well, what if I just didn't have an attachment around this?
Mhm.
What if what if it just is what it is and I'm open to however it can evolve, regardless, and I'm just along to have that experience. Um, it's actually quite liberating, and it's freeing for me, and I imagine it's freeing for whoever I'm in relationship with on that.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
exactly.
as the devil's advocate, I mean, like an open marriage situation, we tried that in the 70s. It mostly didn't work, um, based on how humans function, you know, to be detached. Well, I'm here today, I'm gone tomorrow, and so on and so forth. You know what I mean? I'm playing devil's advocate,
I hear
but
what
I
you're saying, but
think
I think a
there's,
lot of it might be actually what you're projecting into the situation. I think it has to do a lot with what your perception of what things ought to be. Whereas my perception is just, what if I was just open? And I don't necessarily mean that in an open marriage kind of way, but
I just took it as an example.
right, but I
Yeah.
think again, the hurt feelings all come from either what you're projecting into the situation or what your expectations were of the situation. And where I'm coming from is a place of, well, what if we just kind of didn't pile on those types of rules and expectations? Then with that open mind, almost that beginner's mind of just being open, you might actually be completely changed by experiencing something that you had not expected or anticipated or tried to manage.